Fred, how are you, my friend?
I'm all right, Jay. How was your day been, brother?
It's been good. It's been an intense couple of days. It's I think the roundtables have been phenomenal, and just you know what? It's a lot of fun. This is what it's all about. It's pretty cool. So, um, with that, we're gonna go ahead and get started right away. I know the three of you pretty good. I don't think we're gonna be short on words here, so we want to get kicked off right away. And we're going to do so by first explaining what the panel is. So, we're going to talk about technician career development and training, kind of how those play together, and what we can do as shops to really accommodate and help technicians out with this. So, we're going to start with some quick introductions. Um, I'm joined by Damon, Ray, and Fred, and I'm going to have each of you give a brief summary of your background and who you are. So, Damon, would you want to kick us off?
Sure, Jay. My name is Damon Agostino, and I've been a technician for 9 years. I work at an independent shop in McClenny, Florida. I'm the lead technician there. We are an AC Delco shop, so we see a lot of General Motors vehicles. But I enjoy doing what I do and been a part of the independent world since I've been a technician.
Fred, do you want to go ahead? Oop, wait.
Freaking mute button. I'm Fred Gestwicki Jr. I am the owner of Fixer Fred Auto Repair Center in Canton, Ohio. We are by the Football Hall of Fame. If Canton, Ohio ring a bell, that's the only reason you know the city I live in. I had 15 years dealer experience with a little bit of independent, but almost primarily Asian import dealers. And then I opened my shop a little over 10 years ago. We service domestic and Asian from oil changes up to full drivability, no diesel, no Euro.
Last but not least, my friend Ray.
Hello, everybody. And first and foremost, thanks, Jay, for year two on this. I've been catching the panel here, and it's been a really good. You guys, hats off. You guys done a great job at this. So my background is I'm actually a Midwest import. So I'm Northern New York young lad that grew up with a family business excavating and got into the field because we fixed everything. Went to Ohio Diesel Tech. Stayed in the industry with General Motors as a flat rate tech for quite some time, even dabbled in the politics and ran a highway department, but got my foot in the door with Freightliner over 16 years ago and made my ranks up through and moved out to the Midwest 8 years ago. And I oversee now both training departments for Stoops and Truck Country. So Indianapolis is one location for our training department and training center, and Dubuque, Iowa is our second one. So kind of cool for me because I did come from the ground up in the floor, and here I sit now overseeing our training and development for our technicians and admin staff.
Well, what I think is really cool about this panel, and we talked about this in our pre roundtable meeting, and that is kind of the different backgrounds here, right? And Ray, you had a fair amount of automotive experience, but really find yourself in the truck world now. And then we have two from the automotive independent side. Fred spent some time in the dealer world, so he's familiar with that space. But a lot of what we're talking about today applies to both automotive and truck and machinery and anything in this industry, right? And I think we've seen that over the course of the past couple of days is that by bringing smart people together, regardless of what service affiliation they're a part of, you're able to really get some great insights out there. And that's what I'm excited about today is being able to talk about training the technicians, the importance of training to technicians, and really how we can step up our games a little bit, right? How can we treat technicians better? We can give them more training. We can give them career opportunities and career paths. So I want to start with that piece and talking about the importance of training to technicians and why is this so important? And Damon, being that you're the one on the front lines right now, I want to start with you and talk to me a little bit about why training is a big deal to a technician.
Well, a technician that is not properly trained, number one, if they're on flat rate, they're going to lose their butt. They're not going to make their time. They're definitely not going to be over 100% efficiency. And they're going to make a lot of mistakes. Early on in my career, when I had very little training, it took me a long time to diagnose some problems that today just take 15 minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Training is paramount, and proper training is very important in a technician's career, because without it, you're just lost, especially at an independent shop where we service all makes, all models. There's so much training involved. And I think Fred, has a key there where he does no Euro, no diesel. I wish we could do that.
Well, Fred, you're seeing both sides of this, or you've seen both sides of this, right? Where you've been in those technician shoes and been in the owner's shoes. So, I mean, does that translate when you go into the owner's seat and you go into that owner's office that you still understand the importance of training? I'm assuming
you would think that, wouldn't you? You would think that, after 15 years of dealer training, Hyundai Master Mechanic, Kia Master Mechanic, Mitsubishi Master Mechanic, and then mid-level certs on like 4 other Jap lines, you'd think I'd know, but no. I went 5 years just no training and was like, man, everybody's dumb, including me. I was like, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on with these cars. And to touch on what Damon said about us doing no Euro, no diesel, a few years ago, I came up with the concept of define your lane and then drive as fast as you can safely in it. Because before that, Damon, my motto was, if it takes gasoline, we can fix it. It wasn't just cars and trucks. I worked on partner saws. I worked on scissor lifts. I worked on anything that took gasoline. And that lane is extremely wide and almost impossible to dominate.
Yeah.
So in training, how would I offer training if you could be working on a motorcycle, a scissor lift, and a BMW? So we did is we found the spot where we want to be, and we realized these people I hire, like I get somebody fresh out of the dealer, they're master mechanics, they know everything. 4 years later, they're obsolete. It's like buying a new cell phone. So I know I've got to take those smart people and keep them smart. You've got a nice plant, water it. It fits everything in life. You've got to take what you have and nurture it to be better, because if not, it's just going to shrink. Right, Jay?
Yeah, well, and Ray, I'd be curious to get this a little perspective from you here too. I think what Fred just said there is really important to note, which is, do we see maybe more specialists coming our way, more people that are focused in one area because the technology has grown to the point to where it's almost impossible to stay on top of everything?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things, I'm going to back up real quick. So Damon hit it about being trained, right? So some of the stats that we pull up, 10% on average, better recovery rate on repairs when you're trained and certified. So that's just, if you look at that across the board, you take a large shop with 20 techs in it on average, and then put that 10% for each job that they're doing, gaining recovery. I mean, it's a win-win situation. But yeah, as far as the specialized goes, right, I'm going to tell you, yeah, you get some engine guys. Some of our engine guys really want to just stick with Detroit only. But for the most part, you have your engine gurus and you have your chassis gurus. You have your suspension guys. I hate to say it, but the gear guys, the drivetrain guys are becoming a little less dominant because it's quicker to replace with a reman or something, when it comes to trans or rear differentials. But it definitely, I can see it steering into that specialized. There's been a little chatter, of course, about the EV vehicles coming out. And that's going to take another specialty type guy too. You got your electrical guys. So yeah, it's going to become a little more specialized. You can't be that all-in-one master tech anymore at all.
And Damon, how do you manage that expectation, right? You're in an independent shop where you are seeing everything. And I know one of the things I absolutely love about you is how serious you take training. And I think you take training to a different level than most. How do you stay on top of this, or how do you even prioritize what training you want to go to?
Well, to back up a little bit, over the years, I've convinced the owner, being the lead diagnostician there, and actually the only one right now, I've convinced my owner of the shop to, if I say, hey, let's turn it away, he turns it away. So basically, if I get something, say a BMW, and I just have no clue of what the problem can be or how to go about diagnose it in an efficient manner and be accurate about it. Because some makes and models, you have to have a factory scan tool, which we do have with General Motors. So I don't turn any General Motors away, and I haven't really turned any Fords away. But getting smart into knowing your limits. In other words, am I going to take this BMW in just to make maybe 2 hours, but spend 8 hours researching what I need to know to repair it? So I've focused my training, in pretty much one area, specializing in General Motors, but in programming and electronics and electrical troubleshooting and drivability. I don't know anything about rebuilding a carburetor, don't want to know. Send it to the mechanic that's been doing it for 35 years at the other end of the shop. So, but you do as a technician have to know your limits, and pretty much you're going to have an aptitude for something, and just go with that aptitude and go down that lane, as Fred said, and go fast. And that's pretty much what I've done. And fortunately for me, I've lucked out, because shops everywhere, and even my shop, are screaming for a good electrical, electronic, and drivability technician. So I pretty much lucked out in the direction that I went in that.
Fred, similar to you?
Somewhat. See, when you define the lane to be thinner, then you don't have to specialize as hard. Like in Ray's situation, Ray, you're in a heavy equipment dealership, so to speak, where like you don't get to, if somebody has the right brand, you have to take it in, right?
Right.
I can go, nah, like I can do that. Like somebody can go, hey, do you work on 96 Blazers? And I can laugh and be like, no, we actually don't. I can just pick. We also don't do OBD1. So to specialize the training, what I like to do is it's more like a focus area. So like my lead technician, his focus for the past year has been oscilloscoping. He wants to become the best oscilloscope diagnostic tech in the area. That's his goal. I have a technician that just started Monday. We're trying to take him more towards heavy line specialty, where he knows how to disassemble engines, how to disassemble transmissions. So he's learning the big bolts. So we're specializing the training, but
there's Fred's music on cue. I think he's the one out of all the panelists over the last couple of days that could rival Sarah with their playlist. So yes. Did you want to?
It's going to make me so mad when a computer does this. I want to expose everybody to as much training where they at least have some fluency on all of the things we do, but an expertise in a certain area, because I don't want to have where somebody has a suspension job that needs to.
I think we lost your volume there, Fred. While he's working on that, Ray, I mean, are you seeing that even from the OE side when you're looking at a dealer, the dealer end, and you're looking at, I did like what Fred said there with, you want them to be competent in other areas, but specialize maybe in one specific area.
Yeah, the way Freightliner really drives their training aspect is we want you to learn the chassis first. So whether you're going to become an engine tech or not, you really got to know what's wrapped around that hood, right? What's around that engine. So our training starts with heavy duty basics all the way out through to chassis specific certification. So that specified type training path, and as you guys all know, the technology now and the changes in the direction that that's going in. So once they get to there, yeah, we usually start adding in their engines so they can become a Detroit Cummins certified technician. Back in the day, I doubt there's too much Caterpillar running around anymore, but definitely Detroit and Cummins. And then once those guys get into that path, they really kind of stay into that groove from there on out.
Yeah, and I think it helps give you confidence too, right? That, when that training comes up, that you're probably at the forefront of the management's mind on sending you to that training. If that's kind of, as Fred said, the path that you're taking, I think that I think really kind of plays itself into a career path or a career plan, right? Is if you do select that up front, you've got something where you're probably pretty confident you're going to go to training on it, or you're going to learn more. Or in Damon's case, I mean, you do a lot of that on your own. But do you think that it's possible to have a broad kind of scope of training now? Like, whereas, like, so Damon, if you wanted to go and maybe go to an alignment school or something like that, that's not a diagnostic driven school, how does that play? I mean, is it something where it's like, okay, I just haven't had exposure to that in quite some time, I just need some training? Or is it, hey, I'm going to prioritize my training to go into my wheelhouse?
Pretty much it's prioritizing my training to go into my wheelhouse. And I have to be very choosy. There's so much training available out there right now, and we'll discuss it more later towards the end of the session, but how I chose my path and what that path is, being at an independent mom and pop shop where there is no structured training plan in place. But basically, I'm not going to go out at this point and get training for something, that's just, far out in left field for me, where I'm not specializing, unless I decided to change to another shop and the job required me to do alignments, let's say. Then I'm going to go get that, alignment training and certifications that go along with it. But basically, I want to stay, good at what I do and stay on the forefront of what I do. Like Fred was saying about oscilloscopes, I'm very good with an oscilloscope and picoscope. I've trained for years on it, and can do just about anything with it. And it's, and it goes right along with what I do every day. So I tailor my training to what I do and keep it that way.
Which, by the way, I'm super jealous of that. I wish I could use a scope with any level of competency.
Hey, Jay, I want to jump in here real quick. We're talking about, the shops and the dealerships and stuff. But really, when you look at for me, it's a big picture view is bottom line, the customer is the win situation, right? Because you take, let's just take Indianapolis shop here, Dubuque, Iowa, anywhere from 20 to 50 technicians on the floor. And you come rolling in with an engine problem. I mean, are you going to want Ray, who's maybe half certified, to start the job and then go over to another one? So Freightliner really is very customer driven, and so is in our company. So when you look at that, it's a win situation because they should be feeling more confident that now I'm getting that engine specified, certified, specific tech to work on my truck, or that electrical tech, like with Damon. I know that I'm going there and the diagnostics are done because I've got a certified, trained diagnostic tech. So the customer really is the benefit in the end.
Fred, what do you think? I mean, it's this part's very interesting to me because I don't know. It's very hard to prioritize at times who gets what training. Oh, we're having some audio problems there, Fred. Oh, I think he's no, this is still nothing. Sorry about that, buddy.
How about now? Can you hear me
now?
now?
We can. There you go.
I'm just using a webcam, man. I'm not even using a microphone. How's that?
Hey, we're good. We're good.
When you have people that have customers have favorite mechanics, I want so-and-so to work on my car. What they're telling you is you trained that guy so good, I like his outcome better than anybody else. You're delivering an inconsistent experience. They went to that guy fixed their car, then they went to a different guy and they didn't fix it right. So they want the trained guy. And training can deliver a consistent experience to the customers. To reinforce what Ray's saying, the customer's the win. You want your business, your shop, to be where no matter who fixes it, they know what they know, and the customer gets the exact same quality repair regardless of who it is. That works for techs, that works for advisors, that works for parts guys, that works for anyone in any business. And that training, giving a consistent experience, really will help retain your customers.
Exactly.
So and this is, I'm going to open this up to the floor, and I think this might generate some conversation in general, which is great. But one of the biggest issues I had when I had technicians under me was understanding who needed to go to what training, right? And there were times where maybe a tech would come to me that didn't have the experience necessary to go to maybe an advanced diagnostics type of class, or if maybe you had that advanced technician that just didn't want to go to training. I've had that happen before too, Ray. I don't know if you have or not, but I've seen
I
that.
have had guys that say like, hey, you know what? I'm set in life. I'm set in my career. I understand my pay scale might reflect it. I'm just comfortable where I'm at and I'll live in this lane. But when it comes to the common theme of your whole TechMission that I've heard, no matter from flat rate to whatever conversation panelists had, was coaching, mentoring. And that plays right back into this, that from a dealership standpoint, unless you're like a very small dealership shop and got 4 or 5 guys, you probably know whose skill set is what. You start getting over 10 technicians plus, you got to lean on the foreman or the coach and say, okay, when these new guys come along, what is their skill set? Are they going to be an electrical guy? Some people run so scared of electronics and electrical. Some guys hate air systems. Some guys hate HVAC. So I think it's leaning on your own team and making sure you stay in communication to know who to bring into that next training level and get that path for them. Because we've probably hired, and you guys have seen it too, you know, you get an employee, he raises his hand every single time. Hey, just give me whatever training you got. I'll take it all. But are they capable of, you know, becoming that technician that you want them to? So, you know, and again, if it's based on a pay scale, you're going to get everybody. I'm next.
And, you know, to add to what Ray's saying, when I do training at my shop, I will pay you for the training, whether it's during the day, after hours, whatever. One rule for me to pay you, and it's an easy rule. Email me when it started, when it ended, and what you learned. That is all I ask. If you send me those things, I will make sure you're paid for that training. And if you won't tell me when it started, when it ended, and what you learned, why am I going to pay you for it?
Well, and I think if nothing else, it gets a technician in the mindset of like going back through the training in their own head, right? Because
Yep.
it's easy to go for a week and learn a bunch of stuff, and then you're not using it again for 6 months or something like that. That problem doesn't come in, and you don't. It's hard to recap it, even if it's a week later. I notice that with my own training right now, right?
Well, and nowadays, I don't know if for Damon and Ray, our training is going to electronic books more and more. That means you can't take notes. That's all that means, is you no longer have a book in your toolbox with all your notes in it. So having them email me their training takeaways, I've had technicians go to the email they sent me to look at their notes, because they take their notes, they email me their notes, which is fine, whatever. I just want to know what you did. What am I paying for? What are you coming back to work with? What new mental tools have you put in your toolbox? And when they're emailing you what they learned, it's helping them to remember it, and they have documentation of what they learned where they can go find that email and look up their notes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we all live in the digital world.
Damon, how do you do that? Like, how do you recap a training?
Well, last training I took, which was in person, I mean, not online, but in person, in pre-COVID world, we still received the books. But as far as payment for it, I'm the first employee at my shop to do any training or to want training. And so a couple years ago, I asked the owner, I said, hey, if I go to this week-long training seminar, I think it was Apex during COVID, I said, will you pay for it? And he said, sure. But it took several years to convince him that all these classes I'm going to are paying off, because I make sure to pull him aside and say, hey, look, I learned this last month at a training session, and here it is in use now. You know, especially in diagnostics and oscilloscope. So he's all for it now, and any training that I want that is not freely available to our shop, he will pay for.
Do you guys get the sense, or I'm curious because I've got my own thought here, but what's the breakdown of shops that are paying for training versus the ones that aren't?
Can your question before that be how many shops are offering training versus not? Because I think that's just to throw it out there.
Right.
Have you ever had Ray and Damon have one of your training suppliers for like aftermarket training reach out to you like, hey, you always have people at training. Can you get me some more enrollment for this in-person test or in-person class? Because if you don't get more people, I'm not coming. Have you had that, Damon?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. We've had vendors, come down, whether it be CarQuest or whoever, and say, hey, if you can get 10 technicians, and they mean like in my county, it's a rural county. If you can get 10, we'll come out and hold this free class.
Yep. And
Absolutely.
do you have trouble getting shop owners to buy in?
Oh yeah.
They don't want to. Why would I send them to training? But how much time you got, bro? I can explain it if you want.
Right.
So I would think it's probably in all shops, dealer, everything. I bet less than 10% of mechanics that are employed go to training once every quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the dealership world, it's a little differently, of course, because we have to have certified technicians for our warranty repairs. But I will tell you that large OEMs like Meritor, Cummins has reached out and says, hey, if you need a class, let us know. And if you can fill it, we'll put a class on for you.
I actually, I worked for a manufacturer for quite a few years, and that was part of my responsibility, was running an affiliate training center. And you would have been shocked at the amount of times that I had to reach out to dealerships and try to engage them in conversation and try to convince them or sell them to have a technician come to the training. And to the point to where it was getting worse, where, you're trying to explain the benefits of it. And, in the dealer world, it affected warranty repayment, and it was still a battle. I don't know why. I think we've gotten this far, proving that education is a pretty vital thing for a technician, and you can't just kind of skate by now and hope for the best. Like, I feel like if you're not on top of this, and especially right now, right, with all the ADAS stuff coming and with just driver assistance systems in general, it's not getting simpler. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, Damon, but I mean, it's definitely something that if you get behind right now, you're going to be behind for a long time.
Yeah, it moves very fast, and and it's up to me, just my ambition and my free time, even outside the shop, to seek out these classes and to seek out the training. And as was mentioned earlier, with the BEVs and fully electric, or fully electric vehicles and hybrids coming on full speed, I know I'm going to have to get on top of that, because as of yet, I've had zero training in that area, but it's fast coming. And if you don't stay on it, you're going to fall behind. And unfortunately, there's a couple mechanics in our shop where when a particular vehicle comes in, the boss knows he can't give it to them, and they may be sitting on the stool many hours on flat rate, and it has to come to me because I'm the only one that knows how to diagnose it. So they're finding out quickly in their career that, hey, I better take an interest in something, or I'm just going to be a part-time parts changer.
Yeah, Jay, on the management side, though, when you were talking about why, think of the dealerships, right? As a service manager, you almost live by the numbers on a monthly basis. And it's hard to steer out of that mentality of, I'm losing GP if I send a guy off the floor here. So you just got to get out of that mindset and say, okay, I'm going to lose GP for a week, but man, I'm going to gain it tenfold when he gets back.
Ray, the analogy that made it hit my head is when I know what I've got coming for wages, instead of taking all my wages now and using it for what I want to now, I take a little bit and I put it in a retirement fund because later it's going to pay me. And taking that GP hit and investing in that technician will pay you from that day forward, smaller quantities, but over the course of time, you'll get more back out of it than what you lost. And I know you know that, right. But it's an investment. You're investing in your people, making them better. At Wednesday's team meeting, I actually said, we were talking about training, and I said, have you guys put together in your head, I pay you to take training so you can make more money. I'm paying you so that I can pay you more money. And they all laughed, and I'm like, it's true. But then when you make more money because you're better, you make me more money, and then everybody has more money. So it's a
win-win.
thing. Yeah, but it's weird because from the management perspective,
Yeah.
I'm going to lose this tech for 3 days. I'm going to miss the income, you know?
It's like us right now, a little bit battle from time to time with Big Shop, pulling somebody off the floor to be that coach. But if you're coaching those and training those guys and supporting the training that we're giving them from the training center, and you've got 4 guys, let's say, not under a coach running rampant, the foreman just wants them out of their hair, like, yeah, go do this, go do that. So it takes them 5 times longer to hit GP, where if you put them under one coach, you're going to lose his, but within hopefully a shorter period of time, now you're going to gain the GP off those 5 apprentices. So, and again, it's in a manager's view, it's a long ball game. It's not the short play. You can't look at what am I making today? What am I looking at making tomorrow? It's what are we doing at the end of the year? How are we going to progress into making those dollars in?
Ray, how do you? One of the things that I think is so fascinating, especially in a multi-location dealer world or really even independent world, is if you're maybe a middle manager and you are trying to get somebody into training and you know it's going to impact your P&L for that month, right? And we're so P&L driven in looking at revenue, and you're trying to beat last month every month, right? You're just trying to do everything you can to beat the prior month. How hard is it to say, okay, the reason we need to do this, or yeah, maybe a better way to ask this is, do you still feel the need to explain yourself when you send somebody to training?
At times, I think managers probably do, because they're like, okay, so why didn't you hit your monthly number, right? Well, I sent 3 guys out to training, so we took those guys off the floor. But hopefully you turn around and you're 3 times over the top on the following month, right? So it's a roller coaster ride at times. Myself as a manager, sometimes I just sucked it up and said, you know what, coming from the tech side, it was easy for me because I enjoyed going to training. I liked the certifications and that knowledge kind of feather in my cap to be able to, like you said, when I was in the auto world, you walk up to your service advisor and he's got like 4 jobs in his hands and he's got to decide which one to give you because you could do any one of those 4. It's like, okay, well, you're not trained in this, so I can't give that to you. So I'd much rather have options for foreman, knowing that he's got some certified techs out there for his toolbox. But yeah, it's a rough one for management at times.
Fred, you're running the show there in Canton. How much of that plays into your thinking? You know, when it comes down to sending people to training, how much of an impact that's going to have to your immediate kind of P&L, to your, to the business in general?
I mean, if possible, we try and take as much training after hours as we can, and we try and communicate with the techs, because I hire advertising, I offer training. Like, I'm hiring techs that want training. One of the classes that one enrolled was 6 to 10. That was the time. And we found out it was actually mountain time. It was 8 to 12. And they were like, he goes, no, I'll do it. He goes, can I get out of work a half hour early, go home, take a quick nap, get up and do it? He wanted the training. He stayed up to midnight, did the training, so he wasn't beat. When it's during the day, we ask him, do you feel this training is valuable enough that it's worth not working on cars and instead taking in the knowledge? And we take the importance of the knowledge to the top. And I haven't had one say no. They put headphones on, they sit at our team meeting table, and they handle the training, and then they email me when it started, when it ended, and what they learned. So, I've had one time I took all the techs out during the day except one and had them all attend a class, and we knew it was coming, so we sacrificed 2 hours. We scheduled nothing for that time period, and they all came out smarter. I don't see how the training could be worth less money than the single car you were going to work on. I can't get that to work in my head.
Damon, how about you? I mean, are you, when you're looking for these classes, do you find them easily, or is it kind of a struggle where you need to do some digging?
It used to be very easy. Now it's a struggle. Since COVID, in-person classes are next to none. And so now I've had to find new sources, like through one of our parts suppliers, starting to do some training where it's all online. So I've had to seek it out, and also budget the time, through my owner and say, hey, these are during the day, can I schedule to take off then and do some training? But most of the training, like Fred said, was in the evening after hours. So it really never affected the shop. And even today, I had to leave 4 hours early from the shop. And one of our vendors happened to be in a couple days ago and he said, hey, I saw TechMission advertised on LinkedIn. And he said, you're going to be a part of that? I said, yeah. And the owner's standing right there. So, stuff like that. And he knows I'm promoting, bettering myself, bettering the shop. We're going to be talking about training. And so when stuff like that happens and it's a benefit to the shop, for me to take a few hours off, he's all for it.
Well, and I think that he should be puffing his chest out a little bit, right? That he's got you working with him, because I think when we look at an ideal technician and what we're trying to go for, what all shops are trying to find right now is that technician that has the technical savvy to be able to fix anything, but then also represent themselves in a professional manner, right? And I think that's what you do such a good job of, Damon, is being able to do some of this outside the box type of stuff. But I think that speaks a lot to how much you're trying to find that training on your own. And I think, we have a question from Tracy Hicks here, who asks, where are independent technicians finding available training, and which providers are your favorite? I think that's a great question. And I'll give this one to Damon and Fred to tackle. And then Ray, we'll talk a little bit on the dealer side after that.
Damon, go ahead, brother. I'll let you go first.
For me, two of our main vendors offer training, and one is AC Delco. And basically just find out, if you're an independent technician and you're at a shop, find out what vendors come in, and then contact them, call them up and say, hey, do you offer training? Because prior to me, I remember how I first found out about training through my shop. And that was, I found a flyer in the garbage can from AC Delco for a free class. And I'm like, what is this? I pulled it out and asked the service advisor, and they're like, oh, just some training class or something, because nobody was interested. So I picked it up. I called the vendor. I said, hey, sign me up. I'm there. And they fed me for free. It's a win-win situation. But, to answer the question, just find out, call every vendor that you deal with, whether it be a oil company, a part supplier, anything like that, and find out, call them up, say, hey, do you offer training? And that's how I found out and got started.
For me, I'm reinforcing what Damon said. Part stores. If you tell everyone you interact with that you're looking for training, they'll realize that your input is important. And the emails I get from my technicians about their takeaways, I forward it to the parts supplier. I took it one step further and I forwarded it to who supplied it. And what that turned into is, I can't say which store because I know this wasn't allowed. My one parts store just last week gave me their entire 2022 training possible class list. And he authorized his higher up, not higher than that, to give me this list where all my technicians are going to go through and mark the classes they want to attend. And they're going to pick classes that they know my guys are going to go to, because they'll say have a class and no one goes. I saw in the chat someone had a tech go to a class. It was the only person. So if they're going to have a class, they want to know they have attendees. If I've got 4 guys that are going to go, they'll have the class. Tool guys, ATG, the Automotive Training Group. It's a company that just teaches car fix guys. And then here's one that's out of the box most people don't think about. Local college, like your tech school. Our tech school here will fully write and produce a custom class, a minimum of 3 hours for $100 an hour. For $300, I can have up to 10 people in a class that they'll teach them what I want.
Wow.
What do you typically have them teach, Fred?
I've only used it once. It was when there wasn't a lot of hybrid class. I wanted to do a hybrid safety, hybrid disabling, and just like a basic fundamental hybrid class. So I got me and 2 other shop owners to each, to Matt, Stark State. When a local is on here, I got me and 2 other shop owners to go go in and talk to Stark State about that class. But if you don't ask them, like, hey, I know you have your college, I know you have your curriculum, I know you have a degree, but what if I just want to learn one thing? And asking that question turned into, they'll do whatever as long as we pay for it, and they'll even make up a fake little cert. I don't mean it's fake, but it's not like part of their curriculum. You know what I mean?
I think that's brilliant, and it serves another purpose, which is developing a better relationship with that tech school too, right? Because that's where we fall short a lot of times, is just not having a relationship with them at all, or asking for a graduate at graduation time. And that's, that what you're doing right there is building a relationship beyond that.
Yes, advisory board. Yes, offer them whatever you got. If you've got core motors and transmissions that you think are junk, offer it to them. They'll say no. Scrap them anyways. Offer them anything you can. Take young kids that are interested in automotive that come apply. If you get one kid wandering in at 16, I'll take you to open house. Why not? And then instead of you having to call and go, do you have any good graduates? I'm short of tech. Instead, they call you and say, hey, I have this one good guy that I think is good for your shop. You no longer, if you're just asking for stuff, they're not going to give you stuff. You've got to give them something first. You got to invest in them.
Now, Ray, on the dealer side, it's a little bit easier to find training, right? And a lot of it is mandated, right? Like you have to take the training, otherwise you're not going to get the checkbox to maintain the dealership. So it really is important. Where I would go with you is how to prioritize who's going to what training. And one thing that we talked about in the past is being able to understand, who needs to go to the right training, because it's really easy. And this is, I guess, speaking from my experience, where it was, hey, we need this training in order to be able to work on this thing. Do you see a similar thing, I guess, do you share a similar experience to where maybe you're trying to satisfy the manufacturer, but at the same time, you're trying to analyze who is that right person to go to that training?
Yeah. So as you know, I mean, it's really convenient for us as a dealer because we do have our own training center. I got 8 in-house trainers between the two facilities. So it's easier to get our techs to the training. Like you said, though, right, here comes the hurdle is the growth in techs, right? So we're always out recruiting, we're bringing on new techs. And even the basic warrantable repairs, they have to be certified in a level that they can do that in. So as a manager, exactly, like how do you pull those numbers? Like who's going to go to that training? I think we as a company do a very good job because we try to get everybody that basic training to get started. And Freightliner's done a great job as far as building that path. So you can't jump ship and say, well, you know what, I just want to be an electrical tech. So they built a path that starts out with heavy duty trucks and then works into electric, works into HVAC, and before you even get chassis specific. So the path is kind of already formed and molded for us as trainers. But then, like you said, so I'm a manager, I got 5 guys ready to go. How do I choose those 5 guys? Which ones, right? So then comes in that coach, the work ethics, the longevity. There's a lot of variances there that I would choose as a manager. But usually if that guy's been waiting the longest and he's definitely like producing, he's gonna go into the next open class. The other plus, and not to plug the company, but as you know, we built that program where it's a solid sculptured training program for that 3 years as an apprentice. So not only do we have, like I said, that program there, but we have that traditional path. So we have a lot of avenues in order to get more techs through the system and get them into the training path. So it is much easier for us than an independent shop where you guys are looking for OEM training, right? I mean, and we never want to cut loose with it. So I get that, right? I mean, we want to keep it coming through our doors. So I know the government's done some things and opened up information so many years back and stuff, but we've even, our large customers, our large fleets, we do that same thing though, as a customer, goodwill is we give our customer techs training. but probably, it's just enough to know when to, hey, it's got to go to the dealership. I just need that information to get it either fixed back on the road or know when to stop.
How do you, this is always a fascinating piece of this to me, is how do you put the reins on maybe that young tech that isn't ready for that advanced level training? So, I think I was in that spot at one point where I'm like, yeah, screw this. I don't want to do alignments at all. I'd rather go to advanced diagnostics. But in the back of my mind, I would have known, hey, I don't have the basics down quite yet. But if I could have the opportunity to go to that advanced training, sign me up. I'll learn something. But is that the best use of funds? And then being able to maybe share that message with them, or being able to talk to them without putting them down, right? I think that's such a hard line to walk.
Start the conversation from the beginning. When they come in, right? So on our side of it with the truck side in diesels, right? Every tech that comes in wants to be a diesel tech. I'm your engine guy. That's where I want to go. I want to be your engine guy. So you got to start that conversation from the start and say, hey, look, you need to learn the chassis and what's wrapped around that engine first, because it communicates a lot with it. So I think once you start that conversation and slow them down and kind of hold the reins back a little bit, and they get to know how technical and how hard it is, then they look forward to saying, okay, hey, I'll get there. It's just going to take a little while. So I think starting that conversation right from the get-go, don't let them think that, like I said, and the second part is you just tell them no, that you can't jump steps. It is what it is. You start from the bottom and work your way up.
Fred, I think you do as good a job at this as anybody in terms of almost putting that North Star out there, or more of this is your path. This is the way that your career is going to progress, and you almost get that agreement up front, right? So walk us through that piece of it. How important is that piece, and how do you do it?
Well, I mean, you've got to talk about during the interview process, what are your short-term goals? What are your 3-month goals, 1-year goals, 5-year goals? What's your end game? No one asks that question in an interview. What's your end game? What do you want to have at the end? And when you ask those questions, that lets them know I'm not just interested in today. I'm interested in the year 2026. I'm interested in the year 2030 when cars are a lot of electric. I'm ready for that. And then during your weekly meetings, anytime I have training, I offer that training. Here's what I have. What do you want to take? Ask them. I know what I want them to take. I know. I already decided if I want them to take it. But if they're like, oh, nope, I'm good on all those. And there was a class for, I don't know, drivability, lean diagnostic, and they're already good at it. I'm like, you're not really that. You're okay. I say, why do you think you don't need this class? Just ask them questions. Just get them thinking. If you have the right people in the right place and you're trying to train them, and they either want a class that they're not ready for, asking them why will reveal what is missing in their career path. And if they don't want a class you want them to take, asking them why could reveal a deficiency in their understanding of the big picture of the car. And just reviewing that with them. And I mean, when there's training, the techs cut them out early. The techs make sure the training techs that have a 6 o'clock class are definitely out the door at 5. Even though we stop at 5, sometimes you have to pry them out the door at 6. Go home. We need to work tomorrow. Okay, you can't stay here any longer. But on training day, 5:01, they're in the car because they tell them, you got to get back. You make that training a big deal and tell them, I invest in myself to train me. I'm going to invest in you to train you. And when you talk about training all the time, it's not weird. Just like Damon, he had to go to his boss and go, hey, man, this trash, air quotes, trash, what is this? And they said, oh, it's just some training. What? If somebody saw me throwing a piece of training in the trash, they'd be like, what are you doing? Why are you throwing that out? We need to go to that. So you've got to just make it part of your regular language. Make it part of your culture. Make it where people know training is part of working at your company. And it's expected.
You nailed a couple things there, Fred. And I wrote down a note because I've never heard you say this before, but I think it's brilliant, which is when you talk about training all the time, it's not weird. I can't tell you how much that made sense to me when you said that. And that just, it kind of blew my mind a little bit because I've never heard it, and it's totally true. If you're talking about it all the time, it's not weird. That's spot on. The other thing is having that grand plan that we talk about. We talk about career planning and career pathing all the time, but we don't think about why that's so important. And if you've got that and you understand what their goals are and you understand where they're at as a baseline right now, and then your weekly conversations are leading into that, it's really easy to have those weekly conversations too, right? Because I talk to a lot of shops where maybe they have weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings, but they don't know what to talk about and it becomes redundant really fast. This drives that conversation.
Well, and like I have a younger tech. He's only been with me a year and a half. Green, like he was a little seed of grass when I got him. And he wanted to be an electrical master mechanic, and I'm like, cool, man, we can get you there. And then let him tell you about it, get all excited. I'm like, all right, here's some things you have to know to become that, and you have to know suspension. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, you ever work on electronic suspension? They're sensors. You're gonna have to understand this. You're gonna have to learn how to take engines apart. And he's like, this isn't electrical. I'm like, all right, well, you do have to know volts. I'll teach you volts. Teach him some volts. And then you have to be able to get to the injectors. You have to be able to get to the coil. So when they have this obscure goal that's so far away, just give them the next 2 or 3 things they need that to get towards that. Make up a certification and put it on the wall if you have to. Do anything. Just make it so that they know what they're doing is striving towards their goal. Like Ray has those guys that want to be the engine tech. Cool. You got to, just like he said, you've got to do these things to get there. Make sure they see that path. That path is something they don't know. They're not there. How do you know to get to Greece? You look on the map. Someone else went there and wrote it down. If you're the first one going and no one tells you anything, you've got to make it clear to them.
Well, and I think breaking it down into smaller segments is so important, because when you're in your early 20s and you're looking at that, you're like, man, I'm not going to reach that status for 10 years. Like, this sucks. Like, and knowing that you have to go through it, right? You have to go through the experiences. You have to get burned by some of these cars, trucks, or machinery. Like, it's part of learning. And I think it's really hard for a young, impatient person. I was that person to really allow yourself to make those mistakes and really have patience in that process. And I think, Damon, I don't know about you, but when I was first starting off as a technician, like, that was one of the things that drove me crazy, was waiting. I didn't want to wait to get the experience, which hindsight's 2020, right? You look back and you're like, well, that was really stupid. If you're just patient and you learn, that's the greatest thing you can get. And even, I talk to young techs about that a lot too, where don't just necessarily take the job that's going to pay you $3 to $4 more an hour. Take the one where you're going to get a lot of experience fast, because that's how you're going to learn. I don't know if that's your experience too, Damon, or not.
Well, in a way it is. And I had to start small and I had to start slow, because it was a long path to where I am now, looking back, 9-10 years ago. And if I could just hit on one thing that Fred said, he had a technician there and thought that he already knew a subject and didn't need a class. Well, I remember about 5 years ago, one of our vendors offered a class on batteries. And I asked around the shop and I got laughed at. Oh, you're going to a batteries class? And I remember, going to that, and I learned one thing, that has saved the shop so much. And that's, you have to go in a body module and tell it there's a new battery. What? And nobody had a clue about this. And so I don't ever pass up training. Now, there's some things like, for example, emissions training. Emissions in Florida, that's not a thing. So I don't need it. I'll never use it. I don't care about it. No, I'm just joking. It can be useful in diagnostics, but it's not required here.
You don't have an ozone. That's why it's so hot.
Exactly.
Well, we're on that subject, right? Of new guys coming in and they're always asking about training path. I want to back up even newer than that, right? Job shadowing. When we mentioned job shadowing, some different things, right? Here's one of the things that I have learned in the past couple of years. So we're talking sitting here about training and what it takes to be a technician. Job shadows typically are based back on the floor, right? I want to go and see what it takes to be or what it's actually like being a technician. Back that up one more page. Have them job shadow, and again, we're fortunate because we can do this, but have them job shadow at the training center and see what it takes to be a technician. Not just, we know that it's nuts and bolts and it's diagnostics, but you know what? Step back. I had a student come in and said, I didn't realize there was this much training involved to be a diesel technician. And let them make sure that they know and understand that. So job shadow if you can, or send them to training or something like you said, Fred, is if they could get into a college open house and have that type of door open for them. But that's one of the things I've tried to incorporate a little bit is bring in some local schools, high school students to the training center first and see what it's all about, because they can go and job shadow on the floor and follow a tech around one day and think that's as cool. That's the bomb right there. And then have them, if they were a senior, have them start, and all of a sudden they got to go to training and they're a week at a time at the training center going, I didn't realize it took this much.
Well, and I think even adding on to that, Ray, again, if I could go back and tell my 18-year-old self something, it would be to learn the fundamentals and the theory. And I think when you're in a tech school, a lot of times you're thinking, okay, I just want to go straight to that advanced diagnostics. But if you don't understand how things work and function, you're not getting there, right, Fred? I mean, like you have to understand how things work.
I take every diagnostic situation from the engineering perspective. You have a car misfiring, be the computer. All you got's wires. You can't pop the hood. You can't check the oil. All you've got's wires and sensors. You've got to figure out how that computer made the decision to throw the O2 code. You know, I try and put myself in the situation of either the computer controlling the system or the part that I think failed. And then just try and be that. So that my diagnostic approach is super weird, but it's super effective. Because if you think about it, you know, if you sit there and just think, part of our diagnostic process is to stop and think. You actually don't turn any bolts, don't backprobe anything, just put together the info you have. So, I mean, understanding is the root cause, or I'm sorry, the basis of all diagnostic. I can't diagnose the stuff Ray works on. I can't. I don't work on big stuff. I already said no diesel. You know what I mean? I mean, I understand how it works, but not enough for me to figure out when it's broke. That's it. I can just draw a picture. That's it, you know?
Damon, how about you? I mean, and I maybe as we're getting close to having to end here, I'm curious as to what was it that flipped the light switch on for you, where just stuff started coming together?
I first lucked out and took a basic course from someone I discovered on YouTube. And this person is an instructor at a technical school in the Midwest. And you probably all know who I'm talking about. I bought his book for $100.
Hey, do you have a name? You can say the name.
Oh yeah. Okay. So it's Scanner Danner, basically Paul Danner. Yeah. And love him. And I bought his book, and at first I was like, do I really want to spend $100 on this? But he teaches you. He's so good, and that's how I started. You know, what is a thermistor? How do I test it? You know, like Fred said, if I am that thermistor, why am I not working? But that's where I started, and then from there I had a basic foundation that I just grew on and added to. I discovered an oscilloscope because one of the former owners of my shop, we had a Snap-on D10. I forget, it was a big one. It was a brick, and it had a built-in oscilloscope. And I said, you know, what's that? You know, and I remember he goes, here, just play with it. He said, you can't break it, just play with it. And that's how I learned what a scope was. And you know, and went from there. And then so it kind of like just grew organically for me. And then I sort of just picked a path myself and went down it. You know, basically I had to go where my aptitude is. You know, I'm not going to rebuild a transmission. I have no interest in it. I can diagnose the electrical components, you know, of it, and I know the basic operation. But, you know, I had to hone that into what I was good at and what I enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy this, you're not going to do it. You're going to quit. But But I thrive on training. I thrive on learning. And another thing we haven't mentioned, but a lot of my training that I've learned was from studying for ASE exams. I would order the books, I'd study for a particular exam, and I'd learn so much while studying for this exam. And it helps you. It helps you a lot.
And I think that there paints the picture of a professional technician, right? And that's what we all aspire to get into our shops. That's what we all want, is that professional technician. And I think a lot of the stuff that we talked about here today is meant for that, right? How do you develop that professional technician? How do you become the reason they're taking training rather than the reason that you're a barrier for them to take training? And for all of the shops, and it doesn't matter if it's dealership, doesn't matter if it's independent, doesn't matter what you are as far as the shop goes, you need to be conducive to helping your technicians find that training. You need to help them grow. Not everybody's going to be like Damon, where Damon's out looking for his own training. In fact, I think you may be a unicorn, or there's some unicorns peppered throughout the U.S., I guess. But there's not a lot that have that mentality, and I think you can help mold people into that mentality. But seeing somebody like a Damon, or the way that Fred started out, or the way that Ray started out, I think they all have that one thing in common, that they were always looking to improve, always looking for that next step. And if you can help them from a shop's perspective to get them to where they want to go, like Fred said, knowing their career path, knowing what what training they're going to need. Ray talked a lot about that. I just think a lot of what you guys talked about today is great. And as we're leaving here, what I'd like to do is just have each of you maybe give a best practice or something that a shop could take home with them. And I'll let anybody start that wants to, but what would you say to the audience out there of something that they can take back to their shops and implement maybe tomorrow?
I'm going last.
Go ahead, Fred.
I'm going last.
You're going last? Oh, well, I'll fire it off then first. So, Jay, you've seen my tagline, my signature line that, training's never an expense. It's the investment in the future profitability of your department, right? The second.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Ray's stuck. He's got my syndrome.
Ray's frozen now, and it's going to be we're going to play Whose Line Is It Anyways?
Ray's back.
Ray, go ahead. Do you want to finish off what you were saying there, Ray?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure you support the training back afterwards. Don't, just because you got a guy 2 or 3 years in, he's trained. Experience means a lot too as you're going through that training path. Support it back on the floor. That's what that coaching and mentoring is all about.
Damon, do you want to give this a crack?
Sure. If you're a technician out there and you don't want to be obsolete in 5 years, and have not invested yourself into training now, you need to do it, tomorrow. Go back to your shop tomorrow and say, hey, how can I get some training? And if you're a shop owner and you're not offering training, why? They probably wouldn't be watching this anyway, but why aren't you? Because it benefits the shop. It benefits everybody.
It's great advice. Fred, did you come up with something?
Well, I've got something, man.
Well, I think the hardest part with you is just one thing.
Check it out.
All right.
Whether you're a technician or a shop owner, when there's a situation that you did it wrong, whether you didn't diagnose right, verify right, repair right, or you're an owner and your mechanic's making you mad because you can't ever do anything right, ask yourself, how can I train to prevent this in the future? Training is the key of avoiding those frustrating situations that cause comebacks and misdiagnosis from both sides of the street. And I learned this from my youngest tech.
Isn't that crazy? When you kind of keep your eyes peeled and your ears open and listen, how a shop can really teach you even about life a little bit. And I think this is everything you guys said today was invaluable. I mean, this is great stuff. as a reminder to all of you listening out there, this is being recorded, so we'll be able to share this with everybody. I think all registrants will get the recordings emailed to them. We'll have them out on our YouTube channel as well. But I can't thank the three of you enough. Thank you so much for all of your support and for taking some time out of your days today to share some of your knowledge with a lot of people. We had a lot of registrants for this, so I think the content that you shared was great. So thank you to all three of you.
And thanks,
Thank
Jay,
you, Jay.
and Mark and the team. Awesome job with this.
Absolutely.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, this is our last panel of TechMission 21. Couldn't have ended it any better. And I just wanted to say one last thank you to all of the registrants, all of the attendees, all of the sponsors. It really is a lot of fun to bring a lot of people together, talk about things. I think we had a lot of take-home type of advice that we can take back to our shops, implement. I hope you took notes over the course of the first couple days here, the couple days that we had this. And if there's anything that you want clarity on, feel free to reach out to me or anybody on the WrenchWay team. If you've got a question for any of these three or for anybody else, or if you just want to get in touch with them, let us know. We'll try to connect the dots here a little bit. But thanks again to everybody. We can't thank you enough for helping us make this a really, really great event. So have a great remainder of your week, and thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.